Que lo que mi gente, welcome to the Monoplaza F1 podcast. As always, I'm your host, Emi Bertre, and with me is the illustrious Didier Braval. Didier, thank you once again for coming on the podcast. All right.
I'm happy to be here, man.
So today we're going to be talking the Spanish Grand Prix. I thought it was a really great race. I thought it showed a couple things. One, that if there was ever any doubt that Max Verstappen was a generational talent, something that you and I actually don't argue about because we agree, this is Max in a car that is not as dominant as the RB19, pulling it out. And then apologies to Lando Norris fans. It was a bit of a choke job because that's two races in a row now where the fastest car has not won, but the best driver has won out. Didi, I also want to get into the Ferrari Civil War, so to speak. I know as a Ferrari fan, we talked before we started. You've got some insights there. And then, let's get into some signings. Where is Carlos Sainz going? Where's Esteban Ocon going? Is Liam Lawson coming back on the grid somehow? I don't know, man. So let me start at the beginning. Simplest thing, what did you think about, I'm going to just say, Max Verstappen's performance, right? Again, he's a metronome.
Yeah. That's exactly it. The metronome factor of Max Verstappen. Julian always talks about that. He's a metronome, and what ends up happening is, as I've talked with some of other people that are familiar with the situation. The thing you want to do in F1, and I have been talking to you about this too, is to have the fastest race time. So from when the lights go out to the checkered flag, if you have the fastest race time, you'll finish ahead. And one of the things that Max is so genius at, especially when he's controlling the pace, is he is doing the fastest possible lap time given the parameters of what the tires need to do, but also what he's managing gaps behind him. Now, in the past, it's been so easy for him that he could really just be a little bit more aggressive at the beginning of a stint and then just back off because the aggression at the beginning didn't really come to bite him.
Sure.
Tires-wise. And the lead is so big, it doesn't even matter for him. Whereas this race, he had to be on the limit every lap. But the thing is, at Barcelona, the limit isn't the fastest you can go. The limit is how hard you can drive the tires to make them last to the pit window that you need them to be in. And Max once he got past George, that was it for him. I'm going to reserve the rest of my judgment for following questions.
Okay, so agreement on everything there. The one thing, I guess, let me ask a clarifying question. So if you look at the race pace of Lando Norris, at least what I was seeing, and maybe I'm just like misinterpreting it, you saw that Lando actually had faster race pace than Max. Yes. But I think what you were alluding to is that maybe Lando wasted way too much time fighting with George. By the way, let me not skip past the fact that George Russell had the cleanest getaway from fourth place. Those two were fighting.
It reminds me of Max in Mexico 2021. It's Lewis versus Valtteri, and then Max just outbreaks him on the outside and just claims the line like he was the only car on track. And the thing was, where he braked, where he stopped the car, he was the only car there, so he could take that line. It was his turn. George did the same thing. But the thing with George, that you and I are, is that George could never live with the pace, and I think he knew that. Yeah. He could never live with the pace of Red Bull and McLaren.
No.
So what George did was being super optimistic, and I get it. I get it. Sure. Chance to take the lead of a race, you do it, right?
Sure.
But Barcelona historically is a track where the true pace of your car kind of comes to the surface, because they used to test there for eons.
Mm-hmm.
So now we do it in Bahrain, but before the preseason tests
Yep.
were in Barcelona. And so teams have a lot of data, drivers have a lot of experience at Barcelona, except for some of the newer drivers, obviously. And George should have known that he couldn't live with Lando and Max. And we talked about it, how his overaggression in the first stint, he did enough to keep Lando behind him,
Sure.
but not long enough. So he was overdoing the performance of his tires in the first stint, which caused him to pit early. Got him
Mm-hmm.
onto the mediums early. He
Mm-hmm.
couldn't make the mediums last, and then he was forced to get onto the hards.
Yep.
What was the point of keeping Lando behind you? Now, Lando, he could have been more aggressive, but back to what we were talking about before, the whole length of the race, the total race time. Max went too slow at the beginning. I mean, not Max, sorry. Lando went too slow at the beginning.
Sure.
Following George, he could have passed him. I'm sure he could have passed him.
Sure.
But he was trying to be calm and patient with the tires when they told him the plus 10. So plan A plus 10, I think is what it was. They were extending. So he had to go into his tire saving mode, but it was too slow. And that caused him to then have to overcompensate at the end and go fast. Now, he had all the pace in the world on a light fuel tank.
Sure.
On those softs. He had all the pace he wanted.
Sure.
But
Too
the
little,
fastest
too late.
race time, I think eluded him. I think he was slower at the beginning than he was fast at the end, whereas Max lined it up and every single lap was exactly what it had to be to finish first.
So
What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, all of that makes sense to me. So touching on a couple of things. George, something that we've talked about in the past. To me, George Russell is more interested in beating his World Driver
Yep.
Championship teammate
Jeez.
than actually, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
what's best? And it's interesting to me, like whenever George, anytime I hear George on the radio talking about, okay, let's play the team game, I'm conserving tires, whatever it is, it's because he's toast. At that point, he's toast, and he's like, hey, can you guys tell Lewis to slow
Calm
everybody
down,
up,
slow it
back
down.
everybody up, so that
Let's
I
be a
can
team.
like
Let's be a team.
But that's only after the fact. So yeah, you're right. It was a great start by George. Got in front of him. I think that, and it was funny in the driver press conference afterwards. Lando and Max were too busy fighting each other. Lando kind of pushed Max over into the grass. And this is, by the way, a more mature Max Verstappen.
Max would not take that from Lewis Hamilton.
That is a more
Can
mature.
we talk about this?
Well, okay, first of all.
Oh my gosh.
And that's why I'm bringing up the press conference, because when the reporters asked him, hey, so what do you think? You almost pushed him off. And as Lando's like explaining, Lewis and Max are just laughing in the background. And Lando's like, what? And they're just like, no, you're good. Go ahead, big dog. Explain it away. And my thing is like, you know how I know Max doesn't rate Lando? Because after the race, he's giving Lando tips on how to race.
Yeah, on the Max Verstappen podcast, Max said, I think we make each other slower by going next to each other because the aerodynamic efficiency of the cars is, and I'm just like, you're giving him.
He
like,
doesn't rate him. He doesn't rate him. That's not true competition. You listen, you put Alonso, you put Hamilton, even Alonso at his big age of 42 in that McLaren, they would have crashed. 100% they would have crashed.
Oh, man, 100%.
Max would have raced him differently. So going back to George, so I was listening to a podcast, a different one, that was saying that, given all the conspiracies that's happening in Mercedes and they're slowing Lewis Hamilton's car, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I will say this. It is telling that Mercedes' PR strategy shifted over the weekend. So it's Lewis. Also telling that they called the police to investigate, but the police came up with nothing. So for me, it's like all bluster. All that aside, George Russell chose his own strategy. I think you're absolutely right. He was really ambitious. In that track, they knew what the true race pace was. They knew it was McLaren first, Red Bull second, maybe Ferrari, then Mercedes, right? All I'm saying is like the I'm gonna say like prognostica. What's that word in English for it? Basically
The
Yeah,
prognosis,
the models had Ferrari as the number 3 fastest car,
the
right?
simulations. Yeah,
Thank you, Jesus, bilingual
yeah.
problem.
But I think the simulations would have told Red Mercedes that they were ahead of Ferrari. They were.
Mhm.
Let's be fair. But they were miles behind Red Bull and McLaren. And I don't know if you saw, I mean, he put up a defense against Max, but it wasn't anything insane. Max got by him, no problem.
Listen, I laugh so loud because you go back to that race. GP's on the radio. He's saying, "Hey,
This is your opportunity.
we need to get a move on." And
This is
before
your
he was
chance.
done talking,
Got him.
the overtake had already
Got
happened. It
him.
was just like clock. He's like, "Oh, okay."
And the thing is, Red Bull set up the car to go flat through that last corner. If you're going to be aggressive on that straightaway, put it
Mm-hmm.
this way: if you're going to be quick on the straightaway, you have to have a good exit to that last corner. They were going significantly faster than the rest of the field through that corner, and they didn't have to lose too much wing to get that. So they weren't super slow through the straightaway,
Sure,
and then
sure,
through the rest of the track, they're super fast. So McLaren was faster, but
sure.
it was negligible.
But I mean, also, I think during the last sector, correct me if I'm wrong, so you'll check this. Max was able to go full throttle, where
Full
everybody
throttle on
else,
the last corner, yeah.
yeah,
Turn 14, he was flat. And no
was
one
going
else
like,
could. Everybody else had to lift.
yeah, they're
And
going
even in
90,
qualifying
92.
on
Yeah,
no
yeah,
tank, on low fuel tanks. So like, yeah, Red Bull is entering this phase where this reminds me of the 2019 season
yeah.
where the Ferraris had faster qualifying pace than the
Yeah,
Mercedes,
yeah,
but the Mercedes was a more stable car, a
sure,
more stable platform all around.
sure.
So in the race, they would gap Ferrari because
Mm-hmm,
the Ferraris would cook their tires or something to that
mm-hmm,
effect,
mm-hmm.
and the Mercedes had just had a better race pace. And the advantage that Red Bull has right now over McLaren is very little in the race.
I
It's very little,
I think
if at all.
so. So here's where I'm going back, and I'll get back. So that's a good point. So here's where I'm going back. Like, um, in terms of race pace, George Russell essentially picked his own strategy by cooking his tires. So
Yeah,
100%, you are right. The thing that annoys me, anybody who calls George Russell a tire whisperer has never heard of Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, and Lewis
Sergio
Hamilton,
Perez.
who are true
Yeah.
tire whisperers. Alonso's done it several times. Verstappen's done it several times. The last Hamilton time that he did it was in Mexico last year.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, tire whispered those. I think it was like mediums to the end of the race, right? With George, you're right. He cooked his tires because he got ambitious. It's like, hey, pal, I'm not sure if you were trying to stay ahead of Lewis with that move, but you were so aggressive in the beginning. Now you've got
Yeah.
nothing. So, again, to
Now
your
you
point,
got.
he had to go into the pits early, got those mediums, didn't make those work because shocker, again, not he's not that
Again,
high.
yeah, you're on a heavier fuel load than you're supposed to be because you pitted maybe 4 or 5 laps early, and then you have to push those tires under heavier fuel loads, and that just compounds itself because you have to push them harder. You have to push them because you have a heavier fuel load, so you're not really even going that much faster, but you're losing tire, and then you have to do the last, what is it, 25, 30
On the
laps
hards.
on softs. Heck no, you can't do that. So you have to go on the hards, which no one had good data on, and you get what we saw on Sunday.
And so, okay, so again, another good segue. So two things that I noticed, right? Lando wasted way too much time trying to pass George, right? It was great to see on track, by the way. Like they're a little back and forth through 4 corners. They were just switching back and forth before Lando finally got the move done. Awesome. At that point, Max was far enough ahead that Lando could not really catch up to him. Like, and now the monikers Lando Nor if. So if this happened, if this, if that, right? And so in this race, if he had 10 more laps, he would. And I say he could have had 40 more laps. It wouldn't have mattered because again, Max is they're on very like two very different levels. Now,
Yeah.
when you go back to what was going on, what surprised me about I'm going back to Mr. Russell, right? How he fought Lewis. I was a little bit confused by that because it was like,
Yeah, what was the point?
what are you doing at this point, George? Like you're on the inferior tire.
Hmm.
You don't have the pace. But Lewis, to his credit, also, okay, if you want to do this, let me show you something. Fop, 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 fop. It's done. See ya. I'm going to the podium. It's rightfully mine, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
but I guess it's a great segue for me to ask you about first the overtake that Lewis did on Carlos. I loved it. I won't
Yeah.
rate it as much because again, different tires, different strategies. The superior tire was Lewis.
Yeah.
A little bit annoyed because Carlos he whines a lot.
Carlos,
He whines
Carlos.
so much, dog. Like what? Why do we have
Okay.
the? Wait,
Why do we
Do
have
that. Do that, Carlos Sainz
why,
impression.
why do we have the rules, Ricky? If we don't follow them, bro, let me tell you something about Carlos here. I look, I don't understand what the point of the complaint is.
Mm-hmm.
Lewis raced him hard. He raced
Mm-hmm.
him fair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we, it, I've said it before. If Max can do it, so should everybody else. Lewis didn't even do a Max. He didn't go off track. He didn't like. And Carlos with that complaint is just saving face.
Sure.
It's just saving face.
Sure.
How did you see it?
I mean, I saw it as a situation where, first of all, he didn't give him enough space. So he didn't give Lewis enough space on the inside, which something I didn't know about, right? Was you have to leave that
You
cars
have
with,
every time you have to leave it the space.
right? And he didn't. And Lewis said, what did he? Oh, the meme was, I left enough, at least a papers width of space
With
between us. And
space.
somebody said, oh, yeah, it's that Ferrari contract. Um,
Ooh, beautiful.
and so for me, that was that. But for me, Carlos had bigger problems, right? So obviously, we talked about it prior to the recording. He's not going to play the team game. He raced
I mean, he
Charles.
did. He did at Monaco. He did. He was even telling him like, "Hey, if Charles keeps doing that, good old man Oscar's gonna get him." Okay, cool. I see it. And did you see the look on his face on the podium when the president of Ferrari goes to hug him and he just has his hat on backwards and he's just looking like, I hate every
He had that come
freaking second
mierda
of
look.
yeah. I hate every freaking second of my entire existence right now. But I'm gonna do this because I'm a team player. But now we're in Barcelona,
Yeah, which is his
and this
home
is
race.
different. You know, I'm in my home race. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, okay? And dude, I am not mad that he tried to pass Charles. I'm not.
So
What do you
one
think?
thing, yeah. So one thing that first of all these F1 drivers are divas. All right, yeah,
Yes.
every single last one of them, right? Because I thought Charles fired that first shot by saying, maybe he's out here trying to prove something because it's his home race and he wants to show out. I'm paraphrasing, right? And then Carlos fired back and was essentially saying, like, well, he complains all the time, so I don't really know what he's talking about, right? Um, I think that to your point, Charles or Carlos, sorry, is under no obligation to
Yeah.
play the team game. He's in it for himself now, understandably so. All of the top seats are gone because Mercedes is either all in on Kimi Antonelli or they're going to surprise everybody at the end of the season and sign Max Verstappen to a contract starting in 2026, which would be hilarious. More on that in a second. Red Bull, that's not going to happen in Red Bull because, again, why would you replace Max Verstappen with a Carlos Sainz?
Carlos
That's a
Sainz.
downgrade, right? Clearly, Carlos Sainz does not want to go to Audi because look at Audi right now, right? Sauber is depths of hell, right? For the longest time, I thought, okay, he's going to go to Williams, and I didn't understand the Williams move until you realize, hey, Mercedes engine might be something good for 2026.
Might
In
be
James
beautiful.
Valls, we trust, but again, Carlos is not young, so Valls is saying that in 2028 is really when like
Oh my
Williams is going to,
gosh.
and so
Oh
right, could he
my
wait that
gosh.
long? Okay, and then now the latest thing is he might go to Alpine, and Alpine, by the way, as a proud Frenchman, pin this
Oh
question
man.
to your head before you answer my Carlos Civil War question.
Oh gosh.
Rumors are now saying that Alpine is going to drop Renault as their engine manufacturer.
That's like AMG, like the trick, the super fast versions of Mercedes saying we're AMG and we're gonna drop the Mercedes from our cars. And it's like then you don't have a car.
We're gonna go with Ford. built
We're
for
gonna go
to.
with Ford. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. I did not know that.
Hmm.
But like, I don't know. The mating of a new manufacturer to a car
Hmm.
is not a match made in heaven immediately. Or
No.
sorry, an engine manufacturer
Sure, sure, sure.
to a car. I mean, look at Red Bull 20, was it 2019, 2020?
With
It took
Renault, yeah.
almost with Honda, it took them
Oh,
two
yeah, yeah.
years to get it aligned, or maybe 1 year. I don't know
Hmm.
exactly how long it was, but it took them a while to get it aligned. But it was quick. That was pretty good, and they had a head start. They had been working with Honda for a while. So for Renault, for Alpine to even consider a different engine manufacturer without it being planned for ages is
I
just a hilarious
and I
rumor,
think
I think.
so. So for me, I only bring that up to say this, right? So that goes to my previous question. Like Carlos has nothing to prove, but where is Carlos really going to land? Because like, what is he? I rate Carlos Sainz. I think he is actually out of the two the more technical driver. You put Carlos Sainz, and when I say out of two, I mean out of two Ferrari drivers. You put Carlos Sainz in a simulator, he's able to go back to the engineers and say like, "Hey, we need to change this, 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 and this." Where I feel with Leclerc, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's more of a feeling, right? Hey, something is off. It might be this. It feels like Carlos is going to be technical. So I bring up all of that to say is like is Carlos trying to prove to more competent teams, the Red Bulls, Mercedes, yeah, I don't know, Aston Martin. I don't know if Aston is really competent right now because their car is slower this year than last
Holy
year,
moly.
right? Because I feel like he just needs to make a decision, and then all the dominoes will fall. Like, so are we really going to like? Because when summer break is it after Silverstone?
After Hungary, I believe.
Yeah, right. And
Yes.
so I guess this race I was kind of disappointed in Carlos Sainz and what he was doing. Like I don't know.
So as far as the difference between Charles and Carlos, um, Charles knows what he wants the car to do
Hmm.
for him to be comfortable in it. And if he's not comfortable in it, he's not. He loses 3/10,
Yeah.
2/10. But when the car is in the window that Charles has a more manipulative driving style, so he forces the car to do certain things in
Mm-mm.
order for him to be at his peak, whereas Carlos reacts to what the car is giving him, and his lines are more geometric, meaning they're smoother lines than Charles. Charles, to a certain extent, Max Verstappen, to a certain extent, Lewis Hamilton,
Mm.
they can rotate the car pretty quickly mid corner, whereas Carlos is, breaks a little bit later. Trail breaks off off the brakes, turns in, and is reacting to what the car's doing. Max, especially, he know. I don't know if you heard Albon talking about Max's the way he likes his car set
Hmm.
up is like a mouse
Hmm.
that goes from one side of the screen to the other immediately. Like Max knows exactly what he wants the car to do, and so he's living in a flow state when he's driving the
Gotcha.
car.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
when the car does something bad, he can handle it to a certain extent. Singapore. But like whereas Carlos, so I think Carlos to develop a car, I think Carlos and Charles. Your point may be valid. I think. I don't know. I don't know what Charles is like in developing a car. Every time they have a bad race, he's like, "I'm going to go back to Maranello and see what's what." And so it's like, okay, did you lose the affinity with the car, and now you get to go
Yeah,
get it
yeah,
back
yeah,
in a
yeah, yeah,
simulator?
yeah.
Whereas Carlos just feels like, but ultimately, Charles is faster than Carlos.
100%. Yeah,
Ultimately,
no doubt. Yeah.
Charles is going to be faster than Carlos 8 times out of 10.
Sure.
And so I don't know. With as far as where Carlos is going,
Yeah. Where do you think?
I told you earlier. I think look, Alpine would be familiar territory for him. When they announced Danny Rick, when Renault announced Danny Rick in 2018, going to 2019,
Mm.
Carlos lost his seat. Like Carlos wasn't teammates. I don't remember. I don't think he was teammates with Daniel. So um, for him, yeah, he went to McLaren. That's why he went to McLaren. So I just see. I don't. I think that would be a smart move for him.
Sure,
Renault seems to be on the up, actually. Like for them at the true pace track
sure.
to be safely fifth fastest is crazy
I
to think of.
I thought it was telling. I thought it was telling that, to your point about Renault, Alpine, they were fighting with Checo,
Yeah.
which again
Uh,
goes back to my
which
point. It goes to my
again,
point.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
That car, the RB20, is not as sexy as the RB19. It's not as dominant. It's not punching
Did
everybody
you
in the face.
hear that Max went to Imola last week in the
Yeah, yeah, yep.
RB18 to
No,
test
no, no, it was 19. It was 19. He was in
the
19.
19?
Yeah, because they're trying to figure out what is
Yeah.
happening right now.
What's the differences between
I
the
I do know something's going on with that car because Honda is essentially about to release the report that his power unit is not going to be
yeah,
salvageable. So Verstappen's
yeah,
about to take that, which you hardly saw that last year. If
yeah.
anything, I mean, not to say that it never was replaced, but not to the grid penalty point
You saw that in 2022, but you did not see that in
in
2023.
23. No, that car. Listen, RB19 is probably better
Goaded,
than the
goaded.
W11 at this point,
Yeah,
right? And
goaded.
so,
Ooh, the Hamilton fans will not support that talk, but go ahead.
I mean, maybe it's recency bias, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Because the thing was, like, Lewis to me is the GOAT. All right. But what I saw last season out of Verstappen, and you just literally was like, you knew he was going to win. It was a question of by how much. And then last year, more than this year, you had people just saying, like, Verstappen's going to win. So let's just pretend he's not there. And who's the best of the rest type of a deal.
Yeah, yeah,
And again, just anytime I get a chance to talk about Lewis's greatness, he was able to take the fourth fastest car and get himself third
yeah,
in the drivers
yeah,
championship. So
yeah.
I feel like Carlos actually should not go to Alpine. I think that team is kind of messy. I don't know how him and Pierre would be as teammates. I don't
Oh
even know if
man.
Pierre wants to stay there, but then where would Pierre go? Honestly,
Well, they would be two former Red Bull program drivers
sure.
hanging out at Alpine with the yeah, I'm gonna go with the shadiest
Yep, because he's back
character
now, right?
in yeah, the shadiest character in F1 history in terms of being on the pit lane.
Hey, so which one is he
Um,
gonna? Who's he gonna tell to crash the car to get points this time?
exactly. It would. I don't even, dude. And also not just that. He's been involved. The thing is, he has a love affair with the Renault team. So he that was he was on that team for a while, obviously, in the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm,
when Alonso won his
mm-hmm,
championships.
mm-hmm.
Then he was there when Alonso came back after his 1 year at McLaren, which was disastrous.
For Alonso, for sure. Yep.
For Alonso, for sure, right? Um, and Flavio knows how to win a championship.
Sure.
1994, 1995 Formula One World Champions. Benetton Renault and Benetton Ford. Those guys were run by Flavio Briatore with a guy, I don't know if you ever heard of him, Michael Schumacher
Oh yeah,
as
I've heard of
driver.
him. He's German, right?
German. Fun fact about Michael Schumacher in the 1994 season. He won the championship with Benetton Renault. Flavio was his team boss.
Mm-hmm.
His teammate for the first half of the season was a guy named Jos Verstappen. And Michael, I calculated this for a video that I did for my YouTube channel that I never aired. Michael outqualified him an average of 2.6 seconds per qualifying,
Sheesh.
and they dropped him. They dropped Jos Verstappen, and they put a guy named Johnny Herbert into the car,
Yeah.
and a guy named JJ Leto. Anyway, so it's yeah.
So
Back to this. Yeah,
so for me, believe it or not, I actually think Carlos Sainz's best move, and then I'm done talking about Sainz. But I think Sainz's best move, honestly, in my opinion, would be to go to Williams. Again,
yeah,
big fan of James Valls, right? Not a fan of how James Valls has been handling the Logan Sargent situation because this past race was the first time in months that
that
Logan
Logan.
Sargent was having the same car as basically Alex Albon. So that could be just finances. Again, my thing with Valls is
Also,
like,
the first time in months that he finished the race.
But for me, Vol should have never re-signed him. That's a different conversation topic. Like, hey, pal, you saw more telemetry than we did, and me, a regular, degular guy, said, hey, you should not bring this person back. You should literally look to your junior program and find somebody in the feeder series that would be better
Yeah.
than Logan Sargent.
Yeah,
And by the
because
way,
you have guys going to Le Mans, you have
mm-hmm,
guys going to Formula E, you have
mm-hmm,
guys going to IndyCar, and I'm like, why don't you guys let go? I mean,
of
Logan, as a Floridian from Fort Lauderdale, I'm from Miami, but
sure,
lived in close to Fort Lauderdale for a very long time. It's a place close to home for me with Logan, but Logan, let me ask you a question. What do you
oh boy,
think? Who is the slower driver? Nicholas Latifi or Logan Sargent?
Logan Sargent. I'm sorry, Logan
And then
Sargent.
they're the same role too. You realize that,
Yeah,
like they're
yeah.
the same second
Yeah,
driver at
yeah.
Williams.
But here's the thing: don't let Logan Sargent's bad performances mask the fact that Alex Albon has not been doing well the last couple races.
Not at
So
all.
if he's supposed to be, yeah, great, you out qualify your teammate. What are you doing Sunday? And I'll give him that in Canada. It wasn't his fault. Signs
Yeah,
lost control, ran into
yeah.
him, sure. But when was the last time that I looked at Albon and I was like, yeah, this makes sense. Aside from some qualifying. So anyway, so I think Carlos Sainz would be a great replacement there. It needs to happen because then you can get all of the dominoes to fall. And I want to cover
Yeah.
that in a second. Last bit of things on the actual Spanish Grand Prix, touching Lewis Hamilton a little bit right now. You saw
Hmm.
a different Hamilton, obviously, allegations of sabotage, and whether it was somebody within Mercedes or a deranged Lewis Hamilton fan that wrote an email and sent it to the press. My money is on it was somebody from inside the team because, again, you and I work in fields where we get people's email addresses. I know right now that if I send an email to Crofty, Crofty's not going to open that. Crofty's not going to read that because who am I? Like you understand what I'm saying? So for
Who am
me,
I?
it had to be from somebody who's at
Yeah,
was, oh, wait a second, this is somebody important, not Shenlong Tigre 86 at hotmail.com
yeah.
type of a deal. So all that aside, you saw Hamilton finally out qualify Russell. It's 8-2. The thing about those two, everybody talks about the qualifying, but if you look at the actual races, on average, Russell usually goes down in positions, Hamilton goes up in
But
positions.
it's because Hamilton and Lewis fans will agree with me. Lewis's qualifyings this season have been
Terrible. I agree.
subpar, and so
Yes,
that's why there's room going up for him. Whereas George has been probably overperforming the car,
sure.
and he goes down.
No,
I'm not Georgie. Look, Lewis. I don't understand why a team that wants to get constructors finishing points
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
to finish as high as possible and to save face because you are a eight-time world championship in a row team that now is floundering. Well,
Sure.
they're getting their traction back because James Allison
Had to
is a
get off the boat,
G.
James. Come
Yeah,
back,
he had to
James.
get off the boat. He's a G. And I think he's figuring it out. I think the suspension work that Mercedes has been doing, because it's never been an aero problem.
Mm-mm.
I was talking about this with one of my friends. Like, it's never been an aero problem. It was always a suspension problem. First, it was porpoising. Then it's the anti-stall, anti-dive, anti-squat. And so getting the car to do exactly what it needs to do and to control the pitch of the car um, and the yaw in order for it to be as a stable platform as possible. That
Yeah,
has been the thing, and that's something that Adrian Newey was studying suspensions
sure,
all of 2021 because for 2022 he had to have the right suspension for his car. The aero is important, obviously, but just it's
sure,
more than just aero. So with Lewis, I feel for him.
sure.
He's in a season where he has to bide his time. I don't know that Ferrari's going to be a better place for him in terms of fighting for a championship. I don't know because Adrian Newey might. play for the Florida Panthers next year at this point. We don't know where he's going to go. He's
You're
been
right.
rumored to be in Tokyo and then at the Aston Martin factory, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
closed
yeah.
it in secret just for him to tour it. And then talks with Ferrari and then boats and then building a car and
What did
who
I?
knows?
What I heard was that the Adrian Newey contract to Ferrari was done and dusted in Miami. I'm like, come on, bro.
Come on,
So here,
guys.
so here, here's what I would say. I think, and I'm speaking to you hand to heart as a Lewis Hamilton fan, right? What was weird to me and what has been weird to me, not the entire season, but some races where you would see free practice where he was doing exceptionally well, right? And then you get to qualifying and it's like, what is happening here? Now the only clue that I got that something was not right, and again, I don't fault Mercedes for favoring George Russell. That's the guy who's staying. That's who's going to be there next year. He's not the leader, because if he was the leader, Toto Wolff would stop talking about Max Verstappen and Kimi Antonelli and like bring him in, right? So I don't fault Mercedes for favoring the driver who's coming back next year, right? What was odd to me was I knew going back even to last year, Lewis's qualifying form wasn't like the greatest, but I don't think it's 8-2 terrible either, if that makes any sense. And some of the stuff didn't make sense until he said, hey, my tire temps are wonky. And that was the only time where I was like, I don't know, maybe there's something to it. Because
I,
even this
I
past
will
weekend,
say, I'm sorry. I will say, like James Allison gave some. No, sorry, James Vowles gave some insight into that with Lewis, and in the free practices,
yeah,
going back to even the Nico Rosberg days with Lewis.
right, right, right.
Lewis just loves to try out stuff
Mm-hmm.
in free practice.
Yep,
And so he will have a more experimental setup.
sure.
He will do the heavy lifting with that. And sometimes the car makes sense on a Friday
Mm-hmm.
after he's experimented with it, with where he wants to brake and
Mm-hmm.
turn and
Mm-hmm.
and just does different setups and different options for as far as setup. And then on Saturday, conditions will change.
Yep.
Something will change. We don't really know what that something is. Maybe we do. I don't know, I should say. And so then the car is not the same. And then somehow they salvage it between FP3 and the quality.
Sure.
This used to happen even during his title winning championship
Sure.
years. Sometimes Ferrari was just good on a Friday or good on a Saturday morning and then qualifying would come. It's important to mention Lewis Hamilton has more poles
Yep.
than race wins
Yep.
and he has over 100 of
Yep.
both. So he's not bad at qualifying.
Yep.
He's an excellent qualifier.
I
Let's
think
see what's about.
that what's kind of, so as a lifelong F1 fan, here's my question back to you about this. Does it matter more that you out qualify your teammate or that you finish ahead of your teammate in the driver championships?
I think I ask any driver and they'll tell you finish ahead of them in the championship.
Because right now
Um,
he's only like what 9 points behind George Russell in the
really,
standing. Yeah, in the
that's
standings, but he's
hilarious.
out qualified by Russell 8-2. You understand what I'm saying? And so, like,
Yeah.
obviously, people are using that to say he's washed. When he goes to Ferrari, Charles is gonna eat him for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm like,
No way, bro. Let me tell you something. If there's anyone that deserves credit for the way they raced at Spain outside of Max Verstappen, it's Lewis Hamilton. Lewis
yeah,
Hamilton had almost the identical race.
mm-hmm.
Lewis had a terrible start. Again,
Yeah, that was
not
weird.
something he's known for, but he has had some bad starts this
This
season.
start though. So go back to the clip, and then I'll let you finish. He had a good start, but then his
The launch phase.
something
It was
happened
the
with that
second
engine.
phase.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
So, but he knew he took it on himself. In the post race, he said, "I had a shite getaway." In the Max Verstappen podcast, and he said, "If I hadn't had such a shite getaway, I would have been closer to you guys." And I think, to his credit, he drove the identical race to Max just in a
Mm-hmm.
slower car. He had a fantastic first stint,
Mm-hmm.
got onto the mediums at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
made them last until he needed them to last, and
Mm-hmm.
then pitted onto softs and was racy. And that, you can't ask for more. If he had a better start, he could have gotten probably past, because I think
He would have
he
gotten
could have,
past Lando.
He could have stayed ahead of Lando, but
Longer.
maybe, or maybe just said, "Hey, Lando, go ahead, my race. I'm not racing you yet." And then when the car is on, because you remember 2021, 2021, Mercedes did something crazy, which was be gutsy on strategy, and they
Hmm.
went after Max, and they caught Red Bull with their pants down, which never happens on strategy. So, this season, at this race, Lewis had an excellent race, except for the start.
What I saw this weekend, right, was a more energized Lewis Hamilton. I saw Lewis Hamilton. I truly, truly believe, by the way, like, first of all, to me, and I've talked to you about this in the past, it's a little bit annoying that they give Alonso his flowers and they say this guy is eternal. He's 42 and still doing it, but they question, why would you sign a 39-year-old Lewis Hamilton? He needs to go ahead and retire. And I'm like, but what about Lewis's career indicates to
Says
you that he should retire when you are praising a guy who has not won? The last time he won, by the way, was in Barcelona, I think 11 to 13 years ago.
2013. I downloaded the race,
You understand what I'm saying?
and I
But
have it in one of my
but
hard drives.
but everyone is like, oh, Alonso, he's racecraft this, right? And I'm like, why? And I know some of the answer, not the complete answer, but like, why give him his flowers and then say, ooh, Hamilton? I honestly believe Lewis most likely wanted to retire with Mercedes. So if you watch, the reason I say that is like he says like they're a family. I think that Mercedes disrespected him by the contract offer and not giving him some things that he was like asking for based on his time there. And it's evident,
They just wouldn't listen to him.
right? But it's
They he
also,
would he would say the car needs this, the car needs this.
and they
Work
said
on the
stay in your
rear,
lane.
work on the, and they said we're the engineers, you're
Yeah,
the
stay in your
driver,
lane.
and that I think that on top of what you're saying, but that as well, like if you're just not gonna listen to me, fine. We're in this 3 year rut,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys aren't listening to me,
Mm-hmm.
fine. But if one of my a good friend of mine is a Lewis fanatic,
Sure.
and he's talked about how Lewis was complaining about the rear of the car, the rear
Mm-hmm.
suspension, for ages, and saying we have to focus here. And they said no, let's go with zero pod, and let's get the car looking really fast, and let's. And they neglected certain things, and my gosh, the porpoising. I think they were the worst ones with the
A hundred
porpoising.
percent. 100%. So for me, I thought
It's
yes,
unfair. It is unfair. You were saying it's unfair.
it, it,
The narrative
the
that
narrative is
Fernando is
wrong.
this old head that has just wisdom and is fast and can still go fast, and Lewis is what 3 years younger than him, 4 years
Yep.
younger than him,
Yep.
but suddenly, oh no, he's washed. Get
What
out of
I'm
here. Maybe it's the fact that he won, seven,
Yeah.
eight
8. Yeah, you're right.
titles.
Yeah, 100%. He got
And
robbed.
maybe it's the fact that he won 8 titles, and then when the guy who wins the title doesn't play anymore, doesn't win anymore, then he sucks. It's
And
a naive view, but it happens.
it's the same narrative that says he's a car merchant, right? But takes away the skill that it takes, because it's not just having the
Goodness.
fastest car. Because you look at what Verstappen is doing right now, proves again, like I've been saying, he's a generational talent. But again, the same logic does not apply to Hamilton. Either way, the whole point of this side journey for me is to say that I saw him more energized. All that lets me know if Ferrari can get it together, because they brought upgrades in Imola, and I'm still waiting for those upgrades to do
Dude, oh my
to do
god.
something. But I feel like if they get a chance to be competitors again, Lewis and Max, I feel like you will have a more aggressive Lewis Hamilton
I
than you
need a
did
bag to breathe
in
into.
20, because 2021 Lewis. So something that I feel like, I don't know how to verbalize this, so I'll verbalize this like the best way I can. The Seb Vettels, Alonso's, and the Lewis Hamiltons raced in a different generation that said, I'm going to beat you to that corner. And you're going to concede that, yes, you beat me to that corner. I'm going to give you that corner, and I'm going to try to get you in another corner. Hear me out. The newer Max Verstappen, George Russell type generation is like, we're going to go. And whoever blinks first, we're either going to crash, and I'm not scared of crashing. So if you're scared of crashing, you're going to stop. And the only reason I'm saying that is because when Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen were racing in 2021 in particular, you had a lot of Max pushing Lewis off the track. Obviously, they met in Silverstone. That ended terribly for Max. They met in Italy. That ended terribly for both of them, right? And
Yeah.
then, like, you get what I'm saying?
That was their
Um,
last. That was their second to last collision. They collided again in Brazil, I think, the following year.
and Max
But like,
said, "What did Max say? He has
uh,
more to lose than I do. I don't care."
that's the thing about. But okay, okay. What thread do I pull on here? So one of the things I've been talking with my brother about is Max Verstappen. So with Lewis, Lewis has this perspective. I don't know about it anymore, but in 2021, his perspective was championship, championship, championship. I have to finish with the most points possible, given the circumstances I'm in. If Max is leading the race, I'm not going to dive bomb him from absolutely nowhere and force him off the track. No, I'm going to get as many points as I can definitely get. If I finish second, I finish second. Okay. That being said, Max adopted a mentality. Have you ever seen the Senna documentary
No.
that came out in 2011 or 2010?
Mm-mm.
It's a documentary about Ayrton Senna's life, and they talk about something that happened to Ayrton Senna in the 2 seasons before, maybe 3 seasons before he joined McLaren and was Alan Prost's teammate, and that was Ayrton Senna developed a singular obsession with Alan Prost. Just an obsession. And to my Brazilian friends who are watching, Brazilian people, specifically women, can be known for developing these obsessions. And so, but Ayrton Senna developed an obsession with him and had to beat him at all costs. Ayrton Senna did not pull the stuff on Alan Prost that Max Verstappen pulled
I
on Lewis in
mean,
2021. He did not. But that obsession, Max was, I'm going to win a championship at all costs. And like to your point, these new drivers, they don't have that gene in them. You know who really doesn't have that gene? Lando Norris
100%. Oh my God,
does
100%.
not have that
Oh my
gene
God,
in
yeah,
him.
100%.
There's no dog in him.
Not even
There
a
is
little
no
bit.
dog in him.
There's no chihuahua in him, like
And
nothing.
he's trying. You could see it. He's not smiling as much, but he doesn't have that
It's
dog in him.
not.
He's
He's not
there.
that guy. I believe you,
He's almost
100%.
there for vibes. And anyway, with Max, Max will cut you. Now, since 2021, he has behaved much better.
Because
But I
he's
think it's
challenging him.
because I think he knows I have the better car.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get you somehow. I can let you go here. He wouldn't let Lewis go once, not once, not once. So when we're
Not.
talking about
Not. Yeah.
Lewis,
Yeah. Yeah.
not we're talking about Lewis. Like Lewis has always had that championship perspective, and I
But
think Lewis now has to think of, well, I'm gonna
listen.
get mine
Yeah,
whenever I
because
can.
I think we're gonna see 2008 rookie season. I'm gonna give my
2007.
or 2007. Sorry, Lewis
Yeah.
Hamilton, and I only say that this way. A lot of people, a lot of Lewis Hamilton fans like myself say, Max Verstappen, the only one who really like he takes seriously is Lewis Hamilton. For me, I feel like I see that evidence. I'm biased. It's my podcast. I'm gonna continue to be biased because he races him differently. I don't
He
care. Like
does.
he races Lewis differently. And for me, because I feel like Max Verstappen, he's always given they chirp back and forth, but he has conceded. Lewis Hamilton is a great driver. Actually, recently said here are my top five, whether it's PR or not. I think Max singularly obsessed with beating Lewis Hamilton because at the time he's at the pinnacle. To be the best, you got to beat the best, right?
Yeah.
Cool. I think Lewis didn't rate him initially until maybe it was too late. I actually never thought about it from your perspective. Let me get the most points possible. Whereas Verstappen is win at all costs. And it played out thanks to Michael Massey. It played out spectacularly for him, right? I think that.
Yeah, it's crazy how that you cannot. Max Verstappen was an innocent party at Abu Dhabi. Like
Yeah.
he
And
had
Lewis
nothing to
concedes that
do.
too.
He had
Yeah.
nothing to do with the controversy, which is nuts.
And Lewis, well, yeah, and Lewis concedes that too. By the way, he's like, he exactly what you said. He had no part
No
in
part
saying
in
like, "Hey,
this.
we're gonna make up a rule on the fly." And what was most frustrating about that was Australia the year after that, where they finished the race in a safety car. But that's a completely
Oh
different
yeah,
digression. My
yeah,
my my point is this: what I expect from Lewis in Ferrari next year is. When Tom Brady left the Patriots and
yeah.
played
One last
for
ride.
Tampa,
One last
just one.
ride.
That's literally because I gotta be honest. the last victory for Lewis I saw live was in 2021, and
Yeah,
even then, it was
it
like
was
the last three races leading
Saudi
up to.
Arabia
Hmm.
because Max
And
won
so,
Qatar to tie it, I think, and
mhm,
then Max won Abu Dhabi. I will say, Lewis. I wish that next year, Ferrari, Ferrari has a car competent for race wins, just even to the level of what McLaren is right now.
sure, yeah,
Because if you give Lewis that car,
hmm,
he's gonna beat Max. Max is
I
gonna beat him
think
too, but he's gonna
sure.
beat Max. And
I think
Charles,
yeah, he obviously saw something. It'll be interesting to see the dynamic between Lewis and Charles. It looks like they get along, but getting along now versus getting along as teammates are two completely different things. So we'll see. Okay, rounding it out because I know we both got to go.
yeah,
Driver movements. This is the last thing that I was going to say. Quickly touch on this. I think once Carlos Sainz ends up going somewhere, here are the people that I think will not be in F1 next season. I think Zhou Guan Yu, he gone. 100% like he's gone. And the second person I think is Kevin Magnussen.
oh man, K Mag has worn his heart on his sleeve this season,
Mm-hmm.
trying
Mm-hmm.
to bring as
Yeah,
much as he can to Haas, and it's come back to bite him several times. He's just gone
mm-hmm.
over the line. He reminds me of a young Max Verstappen. Never gave up a corner, doesn't give up corners, doesn't like
Sure,
just
sure.
but he's always been that way. I mean, the famous "suck my balls, mate" is because of this
Still legendary.
with
And
yeah
I think
with Nico. So like I agree with you. Formula One probably sees a war in the horizon with China, not them, the United States, and Formula One is not trying to emerge too much in China. It's just not good
I,
PR.
I just
Um,
don't think Zoe's a paid driver. He's a paid driver, right?
and he
100%
he
he's a paid.
brings that money, and China has the
Sure.
money. But I don't think it. I think F1 is cozying up to the United States because of Liberty Media
Yep.
and realizing it's just we have enough with American money and the influx of American money. Do they want more? Sure, but yeah, I
Sure.
see what you mean.
But they're pricing regular fans out. Different topic, different time. So the latest rumor is Liam Lawson potentially is being linked to Audi project.
Ah, no, man, give him Daniel's seat. Give
Oh,
him Daniel's seat,
hey,
bro.
bro. Like I said, Jack Villeneuve committed murder on
Yeah,
live
bro,
TV,
a
but he spoke no lies.
murder.
He spoke no
Whew.
lies.
But it was just he's there for
So,
vibes.
so rounding it out, you already know what I'm going to ask you for this
Pariguayo
race.
y matatán.
Yep. So who is? Let's start with our. Who is your Padiguayo for this race?
Oscar Piastri. Let's talk about
Oh,
Oscar
whoa!
Piastri.
Holy crap! Why? He's
Oscar
innocent. Why is he catching
Piastri.
strays?
Oscar Piastri made an absolute mess of the fastest car in
Mm-hmm.
Spain
Mm-hmm.
in qualifying. Holy moly, could not get a lap together at the track.
Track
And
limits.
to his credit, everybody else has a lot more experience at Barcelona maybe than he does in an F1 car.
But this would have
But
been his second time though. It's not
yeah,
his
and
first.
so I'm just like, what happened to you? What happened to you? You've been on the money, Monaco. You've been on the money in Miami until Carlos went crazy on you. You've been on the money. You've been as good as Land, not recently, but like you've been up there with. You're not You're not Checo Perez.
Listen. Let me tell you. If Lando doesn't have that dog in him, and I'm gonna let you continue, Oscar does have that
Does
dog.
dog? He no f's given. Okay,
Not even a little
so
bit.
I'm kind of disappointed with him. He was floundering in the race because his qualifying position was a joke, and that's on him.
Mm-hmm.
He should have
Mm-hmm.
Lando should have finished third or second or fourth at worst, but he decided to just not. Pariguayo, freaking Lando. I mean Oscar Piastri, and I don't forgive him for that because the thing is, if he's up there screwing around, forcing Max to pit to react, Lando
Mm-hmm.
has a chance. This is everything that every Red Bull fan could tell you. If Checo was competitive, he would put other people behind Max in problems because he'd be like, oh, I'm gonna pit. I'm gonna force you to pit because you're gonna undercut, and then Max has a clear run, even this season. But he's nowhere to be found. And this race, I think Lando could have used Oscar, and he didn't. What about you?
Yeah, could have been, could have been. So I'm going for the obvious one. For me, it's gonna be Carlos. All right. No, actually, no, no,
You're gonna say,
no.
I know what
I
you're gonna
take it
say.
back.
You're gonna say, Jouge.
No, not
Really?
even him. You know what the Pariguayo is for me? Honestly, Lance Stroll. All right, Lance Stroll, FP3. What are
Oh
you doing,
man.
Lance?
Oh man.
Because he
Oh,
said,
that whole thing.
Lewis, clearly, my bad, didn't see you.
Yeah.
He rammed his car into Lewis's car,
What are
and
you
then
doing,
I
man?
think the co-Pariguayo have to be the stewards. What I want
Hey
is for
man.
F1 to have a rotating, consistent team of stewards so that we can get consistent regulations
I see you.
throughout the entire season.
I
Because
see you.
Lance Stroll went into that stewards meeting, said that I was pissed, so I ran my car into him. And they said, just a reprimand, driving erratically. I'm
Charles did the
like,
same
is it
thing.
driving erratically when he admitted that I was pissed, so I did it? So, yeah, I was going to say Carlos, and no, I almost forgot about Lance Stroll. I don't rate him, but Lance Stroll, his biggest fault is having a dad that loves him. All right, because Lawrence will do anything for his
That is
baby
too
boy.
funny. That is too
As a
funny.
parent, I can relate. So, who is your matatan for this race?
My so it is against my code of ethics to praise Max Verstappen.
Oh Lord.
So I'm just kidding. I'm gonna say Lewis Hamilton. Because he drove pretty much the same race as Max, except in a slower car, so he finished behind him. And
Mm-hmm.
he was more patient. I was going to say
Mm-hmm.
this earlier. Lewis Hamilton is a champion, obviously, but Lewis Hamilton races like a champion. Lewis Hamilton is like a royal. They're not rushed. They're not they're not they're not summoned. They summon. And so Lewis did exactly what he needed to do. He knew he needed to do it. He didn't even send the code switching messages with the whole "Bono, my tires are gone." No, he was just like, "I'm in this. Let's go." And
Yeah.
I respected that. Cole Matatang. I'm gonna say Max Verstappen. Max
Sure.
was
Yeah.
drove out of this world to keep the gap what it needed to be, to maximize his tires in what could be argued is the slower car. When a driver wins races in a slower car, we call
Mm-hmm.
that being incredible. And so, fine. But was he much slower? Probably not. But
No.
yeah. What about you?
Man. So my matatan, I think the obvious choice for me would be Lewis Hamilton, but actually, no. Yeah, I'm gonna give it to Max, and here's why I'm giving it to Max. As much as it is what it is for me, he's not in the fastest car, right? I would agree. If what you're saying is that McLaren has the fastest car, yes, he does. What Max did this past Sunday was say, hey, you can have the fastest car, you can get pole position. I'm going to show you how it's done. And the fact that what even made it like more matatan for him, like I was saying earlier, he doesn't rate Lando as competition. And what killed it for me was him giving him driving tips. You don't give your competition driving tips. Nah, dog, you figure it out. You can beat me. Cool. If not, then obviously I'm better.
And
Um,
Lando didn't give him space at the beginning, and he wasn't complaining about it.
because he knew, like,
But yeah, but
he doesn't rate him.
but you remember Baku sprint last year when George did the will of the Lord and basically crashed his car into Max, and Max was fuming. And I get it; they didn't collide in Barcelona, but they didn't collide because Max went on the grass.
Sure,
So I don't know.
sure.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
Again,
I think you're right.
he
He doesn't rate him.
he doesn't rate Lando.
Yeah.
And again, I'm giving him that matatan because I want to really cheer for Checo Perez and I want him to do well. But right now it's like, what is happening? All right, because that car is the second fastest right now at least. So Checo
But
should
even when it
be
was
up there.
fastest last season, you saw Austrian qualifying.
100%.
And it's
But that
probably gonna
car,
no, it's not gonna happen again because they put gravel traps. Oof.
the RB19 covered all manner of mistakes because you could mess up and still beat somebody by 2 days,
You know
right?
that
So
is that same commentary you just made is what Mercedes fans say about their strategy. Their
yeah,
car
Lewis, inshallah.
for their championship winning seasons, Lewis's pace in the race and everything covered their strategic blunders that we're starting to kind of
100%.
see now that they're slower.
A hundred
But
percent.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, Madathon, Max Verstappen. All right. Last word from you, just before I sign off. You looking forward to Austrian Grand
very
Prix? It's a
much.
sprint weekend, which I hate.
Very much looking forward to it. I so Ferrari allegedly has one advantage right now, and that is traction out of slow speed corners.
I like
And
it.
while Austria is not known for having slow speed corners, they have a really big braking zone in turn three, but it looks like turn two. It's so you make a right, and then there's a long left, which they call turn two. It's not really a
Mm-hmm.
turn. And then into
Mm-hmm.
turn three, you have a really strong, hard braking zone and a traction zone right out of that. Hopefully, we can make our advantage there, and we could be competitive. But either way, if McLaren races really well there too, I'm looking forward to. Look, I almost posted this today. My favorite one of my favorite Charles victories is 2022 Austria.
That's fair.
He passed Max Verstappen three times in one race. Name me the last time anyone has done that. So
Hey,
I'm looking forward to it. What about you?
hey, your lips to God's ears.
Guys?
Honestly, I'm, I'm just wishing for little things, right? I don't want sheer domination by Red Bull. I do want a race as long as if the McLaren wins, that it's car 81 that wins. All
Yeah.
right. Just to prove the point that I am that guy because it took me less time.
Yeah.
Would love to see Ferrari either one, whether it's Carlos or whether it's Charles, win. Obviously, more than anything, I would love for Lewis Hamilton to get that elusive victory that has eluded him for going on 2-3 seasons now. I'm mostly looking forward to it because a lot of teams have figured their stuff out. Ferrari supposedly has. McLaren definitely has. Mercedes
Alpine.
is bringing up,
Alpine has. I know, but Alpine
and
has.
so we'll see. I think, yeah. So I'm excited about it. I'm not excited about being a sprint. I don't like sprints because I'm a guy that takes a long time to prepare, and sprints really like. Oh, I mean, now they let you change. Obviously, after sprint qualifying, you can make adjustments to your
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
Great, cool. But again, I think I told you earlier in this season, I kind of wish they did whatever you finish in the sprint is going to be your
The
starting
original
order.
format. That was the original format.
Like that. That I like. All right, so that's it. Next weekend, hopefully you can join me again. I'm gonna see if I can get George on the show. George, I don't know if you'll actually watch this. I'm gonna call you. This will be interesting. As always, Didi, thank you for
Of
coming
course.
to this show. If you watch it, comment, like, subscribe. Tell your mommies, your papis, your tios, your tias, abuelos, abuelas for the Monoplaza F1 podcast. I'm Emir Tres. This was Didi Bobo. Peace.